No plan can please everyone.
This may be an understatement from the attorney representing the independent commission that drew this congressional district map. It creates 4 Democratic-leaning districts, 3 Republican-leaning, and 1 toss-up. Colorado's Supreme Court justices have to either approve it or send it back to be redrawn with instructions on what the commission did wrong.
I understand you disagree with the map, but where's an abuse of discretion here?
Here are some of the questions the justices asked as they heard arguments from a half-dozen groups on why the map needs to be redrawn.
If we ended up disagreeing with you and agreeing with what some of your opponents are asking us to do, and we remanded this to the commission, how does it play out?
It would be fairly chaotic if the end result of this was a back and forth that then went up to the U.S. Supreme Court. How are we supposed to think about that?
One of the arguments made to the court was that the newly drawn Congressional District 8, the one that appears to be a toss-up in the North Metro area, dilutes the vote of minorities. One of the Latino advocacy groups provided the court its proposed version of District 8. Instead of the dark shaded area, which is what the commission approved, it would include Broomfield and more of Adams and Weld County as a way to give the minority community a better shot at their candidate of choice winning.
I would respectfully request that this court give no effect to the map, return it back to the commission with explicit directions to engage in the conversation on race.
Some of the other arguments in today's hearing was that District 8 should be in the southern part of Colorado, which would require the justices to send it back to the commission. And Kyle, there was an interesting one from Denver that I know I referenced on Twitter last week, was that there's going to be a precinct of 19 voters in Denver as a result of this redrawing. And they think that's unfair to those 19 people because you could perhaps know how those 19 people vote if you look down to the precinct level. So they came in, while everyone else is arguing about race and diversity, they said this is unfair to 19 people because it gets rid of secrecy. Perhaps.
That's kind of bonkers. Like if you're pretty sure like where your neighbors stand on an issue and then you watch the vote come down, you're like, Angela. Angela, really? Question for you, serious question. Because this is the first time that Colorado is going with this independent commission, which is what the voters chose, did you get any sense from the state Supreme Court justices that they'd be less likely to tinker with it because it's our first go?
Yeah, some of them made it clear, like, if we send it back to you, as you heard in the piece, like, what happens then? How do you see this playing out? But they are part of the process, and if they think that the commission ignored certain criteria that the voters said yes to, whether the voters knew what the criteria was or not, then they can send it back to the commission. It's tough for me to say because there's that argument, like, what if you disagree after that and then it gets sent to the federal court and then the U.S. Supreme Court? And that's something the Colorado Supreme Court does not want. I really don't know which way it's going to fall.
If this map gets upheld, we're going to send you out to that part of Denver with the 19 people so you can count yard signs, and then we can check in with Angela, who's the tiebreaker. Thank you, Marshall.